Hello, Junior School. Welcome to Book Week. If you're like me, you really enjoy it. Mrs. Watson has asked me some questions about being a picture book illustrator. So in true Illustrator style, I thought that I would answer those questions using some pictures to help me. So just let me share my screen. Here we go. And here it is. Share. All right, let's begin. All right, so these are Mrs. Watson's questions to me, and I'll answer them as we go through. So first of all, how many picture books have you illustrated? Well, currently I only have one book published, but this year has actually been a very busy year for me because I've just started on my third contract. So at the beginning of the year, I finished off a book called Little Mister Gets a Sister, which was my first picture book this year. Then I went on to another book. This time it was a chapter book. So I was illustrating in black and white, and then I was also doing the cover for that one, and that's going to be published next year. And I've just started a new contract, but I'll be talking to you a little bit later about that. And that one as well is a picture book. Now, when did I first start? Well, I first started 4 years ago. So 4 years. How long does it take to illustrate a page? Well, for me, when I decide to illustrate a page, I tend to do it in different stages. So it's actually hard for me to say how long each page takes. So generally, to get an illustration, I'll do lots of different sketches, and then I will take a photo of those sketches. So I tend to do those in a sketchbook. I'll take a photograph, and then I take a photo with my iPad. You can see actually the photo there showing me working with my Apple Pencil, and I do the colour and the final illustration on an iPad. I did used to work traditionally, but I have found that publishers tend to like you to work digitally. First of all, it's a lot faster. And secondly, it really helps you out when you make a mistake. You can correct it without starting again. And really importantly, if a publisher comes back and says, I'd really like this colour changed or that colour changed, then the process is so much easier than starting again. So I haven't really given you an answer, but I guess I would say a number of hours. And I will probably do an illustration, I think, over 3 days, but not 3 full days, 3 little parts of days. Can I say 4 hours? I'm guessing. All right, so my first book, some of you might know, was Everybody Can Dance. It was a book that was published last year, I think it was, beginning of last year. It was my very first book, and it came about because a publisher saw my pictures on Instagram, and they contacted me and said, would I be free to do a picture book? That book I did traditionally, and so you can see there from my sketches that I was working with watercolour and coloured pencil, and a lot of those illustrations were just vignettes, which means they were small little details rather than a full page spread, which means it was easier. And if there were details to change, then it wasn't such a big process to change the details of those illustrations. So how does it go from being an idea to a finished work on sale in books? Well, most of the ideas that come to be in books, for sale in bookshops, are the ideas from the author. So the author thinks of an idea and they will write a manuscript. They'll send it to a publisher, and then the publisher, who gets sent many, many manuscripts, decides whether or not they are going to publish that particular story. When they've chosen the story, then they go about finding the illustrator. And when they find an illustrator, they show you the manuscript and you decide whether or not you're going to work on that. And then it goes through the period of time while the illustrator works. Then the illustrator hands the work back in digitally, back to the publishing house, and the publishing house then go about the process of getting the books printed and marketing the books. So it's actually quite a long process. It's also a very competitive process. So many of the stories, in fact, most of the stories that are written by people hoping to have their books published are never printed. And same for illustration, that's very competitive too. So it's difficult to get work as an illustrator. And so it really does make you appreciate it when you do get to work on a book. So for me, this is the process, and this is the process that many illustrators would use when they're working on a book. So down the side, you can see my little sketches. This was actually for the book that I completed at the beginning of this year called Little Miss Star Gets a Sister. That's going to be published by a Larrikin, and it's going to be coming out into bookstores in October of this year. So when I read the manuscript, it didn't say whether the little characters were people or animals. And so I did do some sketches as people, and you can see there the top sketch is a little rabbit. I thought it might be sweet to be a little rabbit. The publisher came back and said, can you do some sketches with tigers as the characters? And so that's what I did, and that's what we ended up going with. And the next picture is a really important step, that picture of my hand on the iPad. So that's the whole book, and it's called storyboarding, where you put the words in and then you draw pictures for what's going to happen on each double page spread. And then the publisher will look through that, decide whether they're going to go with that, and then after that, if you get the go ahead, then you'll go and you'll produce every illustration for every double page. Now, the next 2 pages are actually the bookends for my story. So that's going to be the end papers that appear in the Larrikin storybook. And my final picture there is actually one of my pictures that didn't appear in the book. So we were getting some ideas together for the cover of the book, and this was one of the ideas that they had. So I do have an illustration inside that has little sister in her little bassinet, but this as a cover illustration with her big brother overlooking the sides of the bassinet never actually made it. So how long does it take to illustrate one page? I think I've sort of said that. For big double page spreads, it's many hours. And the whole picture book, when you sign your contract, you decide, or you talk through with the publisher how long you're going to take. So generally it's about 4 to 6 months. 4 is quite short. It's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. So 4 can be a little bit of a tight squeeze, and 6 months gives you a little bit more breathing space. So what am I working on at the moment? Well, about 3 weeks ago now, I signed my next contract to work on a book for Wombat Books. And one of the things that happens when you sign to work on a book, you actually sign a non-disclosure agreement, which means I can't talk about the book before the book is produced. So I can say that the name of the book is called Wolves, but apart from that, you're going to have to wait until you can know a little bit more about the story. And the reason I put that little girl at the side, she actually was in my portfolio, which was my group of illustrations that publishers can look through. And she actually got me my last contract, which was the early reader chapter book, because the publisher liked her. And she said, oh, we're doing a chapter book that's got a little girl character and we'd like you to have a read of the manuscript. And so she got me that contract. Oh, what is the best thing about being an illustrator? When I'm working on a book, and you're working on individual illustrations, I love to, in my head, to go into that world. I find it very relaxing. it's fun being creative, and so just generally I really enjoy it. So what would be challenging when illustrating a picture book? One of the most challenging things for a lot of illustrators, I think, would be finding books to work on, because there being so much competition. And yeah, I don't really know what else is challenging. I really enjoy it, so I'm hoping I can do lots more. Well, that's all. So let me just turn off my screen share. If you have any questions for me, feel free to send them to me at my email at school, and I can answer those for you. And I hope that you liked learning a little bit about my illustration process. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.